This is for the cancel culture. We out here canceling everything, so let's cancel something and make it productive. Let's cancel race. It's only one race. That's the human race. I don't know when we got into calling everybody different colors, but it's time to stop that. It's time to cancel racism. It's time to cancel race. Only one race. That's the human race. Let's stop racism, you guys. Let's start unity. We understand it's a spiritual warfare out here, and the spirit of racism is upon a lot of us. It's time to go deep into prayer and cast that spirit out of everybody, you guys. It's time for the great restoration to happen, you guys. It's time to come out of depression. It's time to come out of stress. It's time to go into unity. It's time to go into peace. Let's start amongst each other, guys.
You see, I got hope, so we can use a little, even when you don't, and I won't let go, 'cause a little bit of it can go a long, long way.
There's hope in front of me. There's a light, I still see it. There's a hand still holding me, even when I don't believe it. I know you're able and I know you can. See through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone.
In every storm that we face, every time that the rain pours down, I know there's hope. In every tear that we cry, every time we ask why we break, I know there's hope.
It's Hope, Dead or Alive, a special series from all over the road, New Orleans.
Oh, I'm hopeful, yes I am hopeful for today. Take this music and use it, let it take you away. And be hopeful, and he'll make a way. I know it ain't easy, but that's okay, 'cause we hopeful.
All Over the Road New Orleans is brought to you by Coin Trader Inc. Mind your money.
Ah, yes, it's another All Over the Road New Orleans podcast with the king of all podcasting, Victor DelGiorno, with Ted Semper to my left.
Hey.
Hello, Teddy.
Doing great. Just great to be here. Absolutely.
Try to get up on that mic a little bit, baby.
I'm right. It's halfway down my throat right now, dude.
Okay, now listen. This is our beginning of our 8-part series on Hope, Dead or Alive.
That's right.
We just got back from the New Orleans mission, and coming soon, we're going to have stories from the mission.
Yeah.
We had 4 great stories lined up, and stupid Vic, which is me.
Do you really want to say this? You can
Yes,
admit
no.
it.
Stupid
Might as
me.
well take-
Forgot to turn the mic on.
He's going to own his mistake,
own
his
my-
technical blunder.
My flubbery.
Yeah, well.
So
they were so good too, but they'll be even better the next time. There's so many stories over there from New Orleans
man.
mission. It's going to be an endless string of stories that we'll have.
And the facility was just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty
the
impressive.
lunch. It was
Yeah.
just a great day.
It was
And
great.
then, of course, I had to screw it up with the
Yeah.
the mic's not working. But this is our 8-part series that we're going to be doing on Hope, Dead or Alive. Remember, we've done stuff. We're generally an entertainment type podcast and somewhat comedic. I consider myself to be somewhat funny.
Somewhat.
Okay. But we've had serious shows. We did the 2-part interview with Dan Snyder, Tunnel of Hope, the pharmacist that we aired in its entirety, 2 shows. I mean, we had him and his wife Annie in great interviews. We've done stuff with Team Gleason, One Heart Knoll, of course, The Mission, Lynn Haven Retreat, and Louisiana Hayride, to just name a few. And what we are going to try to accomplish here is, in a time like this, the question is, and this is the question that we're asking, is hope dead or is hope alive? And this is what we got to figure out here in this series, okay? So here we go. Is hope dead or alive, folks? That's the question. And we've got a great interview today with a man, I guess you could say this. He started out as my little brother's best friend. Then he became my best friend. Then he became the pastor of my church that I attend.
Yep.
And when I don't attend, I like to send a check ahead just in case I'm not there. Try to send a check, at least. His name is Keith Collins. Let's give him a big hand.
Yeah.
Thank you, Keith.
It's more applause than I get on a Sunday, Vic. Thank you.
You should get more
Oh, come
applause.
on, man.
Thanks for warming it up for
You,
me.
you should get more applause than you get.
I got to say, I'm feeling some pressure because you and I played baseball for a number of years together, softball. I'm not used to hitting leadoff.
Yeah, you're not used to that. You're not used to
Do you remember where I used to bat?
softball or baseball?
Softball.
I used to hit you in the two hole.
Second or third.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he should hit you in the two hole.
Where I used to bat. I didn't. I didn't get to.
so
I
weird.
remind you.
You did.
Oh yeah, no, because
Ted played
me
on the ball team. Of course.
Yeah, I mean that was what 1985, 6. I don't even know, mid 80s.
So we go back a long way. We're old fellas.
And that was Lakeview Christian Center.
Yeah.
And, well, did we have a nickname like?
well, we had the pinstripes.
Pinstripes.
We had the pinstripes.
Looked like the Yankees.
The uniform spoke for themselves.
It did. Intimidating.
Yeah.
If you ask my grandson Wells who his favorite New York Yankee player is, you know what he says? He says, "Granddaddy."
There you go.
And I have to tell him I don't play for the Yankees, but it's flattering, none the same.
Do y'all still have your uniforms? I should have kept that. Don't you wish you would have kept it?
I still have mine.
Oh, you do? Oh.
I got Wes Van Pelt's jersey.
Do you?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
That's
Wes,
Hall of Fame. Wes was Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame.
Wes,
Great
who
man.
passed away just a couple months ago.
We
now.
dedicated a couple shows to
Yeah.
him. But this is the series. It's Hope, Dead or Alive. And what we hope to accomplish here is, in a time like this, when everything seems to be a little bit more difficult than normal, we want to try to bring some hope to people. We're going to try to encourage people. We're going to tell some stories. When some people on here that have the stories to tell. And Keith, I want you to start out by just telling us your story. Let's go back to Kehoe Academy, that awful rancid place, that awful school.
Oh, we got great memories, man. It was an awesome experience.
And that's how we met.
Which is no longer there, right?
No, it's defunct.
Long gone.
Yeah. Bad management. But tell us your story.
Okay.
I mean, and then I want to hit on a few things because you've had to go through a lot. I remember you went through. Well, first of all, you have 7 children.
I do.
Which
Yep.
that deserves a little applause.
Oh, yeah.
Still going through that.
7. Then they're great kids.
How
They
old
really
is
are.
the youngest?
Youngest is 13. 13 up to 27.
There you go.
Yeah. And Drew, he's talented. Let me tell you, he's
Now, he was
a
on the
personality
Did
plus.
we have him on a podcast or something?
No.
I thought we did.
Get
One
Seth
of them.
on.
We had somebody.
Seth on.
We had some
Good
college kid, I know.
Good memory.
Yeah,
Ted.
Seth was
Yeah,
on.
I remember.
And then, of course, he went through a season where he lost family members in a short period of time. So he knows a little bit about grief. He knows a little bit about adversity. He's also like he pastors a church. He shepherds a flock. And it's hard. It's going to be hard for me to kind of peel the onion back on this because it's a little emotional for me. But with this season that we're in, it's extremely challenging for a guy like him. He's being stretched in many different. So before we get into what you're doing now and how you're being stretched and what is your answer, whether is hope dead or alive, hopefully we're going to get from you whether you think hope is dead or alive. Don't tell me now.
All right. That's hard to restrain.
Okay. And just start from the beginning because it goes, it's a great story.
Yeah. I'm not sure most folks are interested in my story, but I will just inject.
You never tell your story and it's a great story.
Okay, well, I'll inject this element relevant to the topic of hope because I think one of the things that I would say God is this wild card in the world. The world is headed in a certain direction, things fall apart in a certain way, and a lot of it's very predictable. But when you read the Bible, you find out about a God who injects himself into situations and changes the situation. That's right. And that's my story. Right. So I'm going to high school and I'm going to this small private school where Vic is attending. My dad is wise enough to notice that the school's about to go bankrupt. So he moves me to another school after 8th grade. And I hated it. I wanted to go back to the school that we were a part of. And there's no reason my dad should have ever let me do that. But he did. And that was an unwise business decision on his part because the school did go bankrupt within about 8 months. But it was during that time that I go back to this school and I get introduced to reading the Bible and get introduced to a relationship with God that I didn't have. And so God showed up in that moment in a way that just changed my story forever. Obviously, the most influential thing that can ever happen to your life is to meet the God who created you and to discover that he actually has a purpose for your life. And you're not just out there trying to figure out how to do this on your own. He already has a plan for you. And that's what I got introduced to as a freshman in high school. And I grew up around some older guys, not pointing fingers in the studio here, but got around influences that made me grow up a little faster than I should have. So, by the time I was a freshman in high school.
I'm sorry for that, by the way.
Thank you. I was into some trouble. No jail time or anything, but just definitely a young person trying to manage aspects of life that he didn't know what he was doing with. But then I met Christ in that freshman year of my life and just began a relationship with him, began to read the Bible, began to gain insights about life and its purpose at that point, the things that matter to you when you're 14, 15 years old. But God was beginning to relate to me in a way that introduced me to this God who breaks into our world, because that was a foreign experience I'd never had. I've been around religion. I knew something about God and going to church, but I hadn't experienced this God yet. And so I think the one thing that I'd be saying, just relevant from my story to where we find hope in moments like these, is understanding that there is a God out there who is a living person. And he can step into any situation at any moment, and he has the power and he has the right, the authority to change it if he so chooses. And I experienced that as a young person. And then throughout life, obviously the Lord has been gracious just to lead and provide steps. And I don't want to just make that sound like that's something for pastors or something. There's a God who wants to lead each and every one of us into, who we marry and where we live and the kind of jobs that we have. And how do we hang in there when things are tough? And what does God do in moments when the economy falls apart, when there's questions about pandemics and the normal ways of life just aren't going to work anymore? How does God show up in that moment and say something and do something that's going to make a difference? It's going to give me a possibility of having hope in that setting. So that was my most significant early experience, was just getting to know the Lord. Been blessed to have relationships that God put in place. Vic and I go way back to when I was in 8th grade and he moved down here to New Orleans. But just other guys that we knew back in that time period that have continued to be a part of our lives, part of the church. And, God just keeping that New Orleans connection. When you kind of get connected to people locally, they stay with you. And that's been a real joy to have so many years together with people through good times, bad times, hard times, et cetera.
When did you, if I can ask, when did you feel you were led into ministry? Like pastor a church or however you felt called initially? Was it to pastor? Did you feel that?
I didn't really know what a pastor was when I was in high school. I'd never really been involved in a church. I was just a guy reading the Bible and doing some Bible studies at Vic's house. So I really didn't know what that meant. I just was trying to follow Jesus. I knew that I loved the Bible, and I just was drawn to what it said. And then the opportunity to share that with somebody else became very real to me as well. So probably late in high school, I began to be suspicious that there was something that I was drawn to in that category, but I didn't really know what it was. Oddly enough, Vic's brother Michael was trying to figure out what to do after graduating high school, and he and I went to college together for almost 2 years. And he thought about, should he pursue going to a Bible school back then? I had never thought about that, but it did kind of catch my attention. So I looked into that, but just didn't feel like it was the right timing to do that. So I think somewhere around the end of high school and into my college years, I was feeling like there's something that I'm drawn to in that category. But I didn't grow up in a Christian home, and I didn't grow up in a setting where people studied the Bible, became pastors. I was just going to get a job after I graduated college and did that for a number of years. But eventually it became clear that was a sense of calling.
Well, I remember back then with my brother Michael, who's been on the podcast many times, funny guy, very talented guy. He's my little brother. Taught him everything he knows. But that there was a time when Michael actually preached a sermon from Ephesians on a Wednesday night. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Oh, I do, yeah.
Yeah, and who knew that Keith, that would end up being that, that's his domain. And my relationship with Keith has been one, as a friend and as, we've made each other laugh, we've made each other cry, and they're just, I've walked through life with him, his family, wonderful wife, who I believe you met at my house. Didn't you meet Gina at the house? Didn't you? She was
Yep,
there with some
yep,
other guy,
I did.
and I
Yep.
kept telling you get the phone number.
That's exactly true. Yeah. Your counsel finally paid off. If there was only one thing you said that paid off all these years, that was it.
Thank you very much.
Very big, important thing.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Nevertheless,
But I want to back up a little bit about
yeah.
this story, because the gentleman that used to hold the Bible studies in the gym during lunchtime was a guy by the name of Frank Loria, who lives down the street. His kids have been on the show, especially Micah, who's got the body of a 40-year-old. I make fun of him all the time. You rats, the streets are on here. He's got the bat and cage that we talk about on the show. And, it's funny. I mean, like, we're all still together. And, Frank lives down the street from me, so he walks by the house a lot. We talk a lot, and we just stand amazed. But your story has been one. I mean, this is you've been through a lot of adversity, and you've been a guy that with the exception of some of the guys at the church that you are accountable to, other people on staff and other leadership positions at the church. You've been the kind of guy that you've really kind of carried the load, and that's what I every time when I go to pray or something, when I think about Keith, I'm always thinking about the load he's carrying, the load. Mm-hmm. And so I just pray about that. So tell us a little bit about, if you want to start wherever you want to start. I do happen to know that Keith was working with Frank at this company, and he started working with the youth group. Mm-hmm. And at that point, that's when it all started to take off, as far as you being a shepherd of people,
mm-hmm.
of loving people, caring for people.
Yeah. And
they'll drain you. They will drain you. You will never say that, but I can say it because I'm not a pastor. But, tell us about how this is hope, dead or alive. Where did you get hope in times like that? And what were you going through? And, let's peel back the onion on Keith Collins here.
Yeah, I think, there are incredible truths in Scripture that speak into our lives. But one of the things that you can't overlook is that the Bible's speaking to human beings. It's speaking to people who are made of something that's vulnerable, that's easily broken. Mm-hmm. And I think if you overlook that, you almost expect too much from yourself in that regard. So I think I learned at some point early enough on to realize if there's strength to live the life that God calls us to, it's got to come from outside of us, because life is too big for us. And so, probably looking back over the years, there have been numerous settings where you just get in touch with your own frailty, and that sense of being overwhelmed, the sense of being underweight, that's bigger than you. Certainly, I think caring for people, you traffic in their stories. You walk with people through their tragedies. You watch tenacious situations that won't go away. You guys visited the New Orleans mission, and you interacted with people whose stories are long-standing addictions and habits that have turned their lives in a direction that nobody planned for that. And it's tenacious. It doesn't go away. And it rewrote their story.
No, I've struggled with it, even after becoming a Christian. You know that. I've struggled with a lot of the old stuff.
There are vulnerabilities in this world. And then you have tragedies that come. Mm-hmm. Tragedies are different just from the wear and tear of life. Whether it's Hurricane Katrina's that redefined people's communities in our lives. We had 8 or 9 feet of water in our building as a church, had to start over again after that. Or pandemic situations that we've been through that have just thrust uncertainty into our lives, and that sense of isolation that people have felt through this season. And that's been a hard period. This has been a hard period to navigate care for people, because you're so isolated from one another. And isolation makes us all vulnerable. We kind of need the strength that God provides through relationships with each other. So this past year has been a very difficult year. So I think, Vic, I'd look back and see a number of places where you just feel the weight of the lives that your own life that you're living, but the people you're walking with as well, whether you're just caring for them as pastors and they're facing loss, they're facing tragedies. I won't call them scarring memories. They're just powerful memories of phone calls at unusual times of someone who's got a relative who just committed suicide or who's just tragically died. And honestly, you just never feel adequate in any of those moments. You just feel like these are situations that are too big for human beings. Right. And I think we want to show up in a way that's going to matter, but you definitely realize there are no words in those moments that can be big enough for what somebody's going through. So hope gets really under a weight, and it gets crushed by what life can feel like. And the piece of it that it crushes is our humanity.
Yeah.
That vulnerable piece of us that we live in these bodies, these jars of clay, as the Bible calls it, and jars of clay crack and they develop problems and they give out.
Yeah, when I was thinking about a lot of this stuff that you've been through, Katrina completely slipped my mind. I remember right before Katrina hit, the women had a tea at the church.
Oh gosh, yes.
They had a tea, and it was a big deal. And, Martha brought all her fancy china out there, and there was so much water in the church that all the tea, they left it there. We'll come clean up the next day or whatever. And then Katrina hit. And I remember all the china just kind of rose to the ceiling. And then they actually got all the china back. But you talk about phone. There was a point during Katrina, I ended up having to go to Houston because of my work. And I remember talking to you on the phone one time. And this was a real heartbreaking time for me. I was just checking in with you, seeing what was going on. And you had said something to me like, it kind of went like this. It was like, I don't even know if I'm going to have a church to pastor.
Yeah. I remember that conversation.
And it was just, I just melted.
Was this when the building was destroyed? And
yeah, I mean, it was
in that time period,
right around the time I think it might have been the day before. You remember you came and stayed with me at JW Marriott for a while, but the night before that I talked to Keith, and I just, the desperation in his voice, I completely forgot about that. And then, your mom and your dad, the passing your mom and dad, very difficult.
Yeah.
And it was during a very short period of time.
Yeah. I think, all of us have a concept of death. We just can't escape that.
And you had great parents.
They provided well for us, loved us well. You just don't realize until it comes close to home what death is going to feel like for you. As you just do life with people. And, God provides a narrative in Scripture that tells us a bit of a map, if you will, the lay of the land. So it's not as though we're completely surprised. But then there's this departure and loss element where people who have been in your life, your whole life, they've been a part of every aspect of your story. And then you stare into the future and they're not there. And you realize they're never going to be there.
So where's hope
again.
then? Where is it then?
Yeah, I think hope is in a couple of places in that moment. Hope is in knowing the big story. I think if we're unclear about what does death do in the world that we live in, I think if we've got no sense of eternity in that moment, then it's really hard to have any kind of hope. If all you're telling me that is my life begins and ends with my first breath and my last breath here, and my existence is over, well, you've really introduced me to a very hopeless existence then, because it basically means there's nothing meaningful about my life. And hope has to have an attachment to meaning. Because when I feel like I've lost meaning and I've lost the purpose of life, that's when I start to lose a sense of hope. So I think you have to have an eternal picture that God has created us for something more than just temporary things right now. But I think you also have to have a second thing, and that's God never intended us to be these human bodies apart from him. Right? If you go back to the original story, God creates Adam and Eve. And when he creates Adam, he breathes his life into Adam. And he says, receive God's life. And then we know the story of humanity is that sin broke that giving of life between man and God. So God never intended us to be on our own navigating life. He intended to be present in us, giving us the ability to actually be animated by his life. So I need a mindset that looks into eternity, but I need the very now presence of God in my life for me to experience hope. Because in the Bible, we're very big on where do we put our hope? And ultimately, the Bible's inviting us to put our hope in God.
One thing.
Yep. So I need the nearness of God. I need God's actual life manifest inside of me, kind of in a way that our heart beats, right? Our heart beats. I'm not making it beat. It just beats, right? And there's a dimension where God comes into our life where he is present. He is active. He is actually making things happen inside of me that cause me to experience something. And that for me, that's the biggest place that hope is going to have to come from.
And and knowing Keith over the years, I mean, he's almost like a Teflon Don. I mean, it's hard to believe that you could ever struggle with anything. I've seen him handle things that have just been unbelievably handled. I don't maybe want to go into all of them, but there was one instance where there was an individual that was not what they were supposed to be, and I would come to Keith and say that this person isn't what they're supposed to be. This is way before gender stuff, and Keith would just smile at me and just nod, and he's not. I'm like, Vic, I'm not having this conversation with you, and he's been really good about that, and I've never seen him handle anything wrong. I remember he said something to me. You know what? I'm going to handle something redemptively rather than recklessly, and that's how he rolls. The one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I hope I'm not ambushing you with this, but the most difficult thing that I think that anyone would have to go through is what you went through with Chip.
Yeah.
Okay. Chip was my age. He was my classmate. He was in the same grade as I. And the first guy that came up to me when I was a new kid at school, at this goofy school, was Chip. And he introduced himself. You talk about a guy with dynamic personality. And that was your big brother.
Yeah.
And there was an instance that happened at the end of his life that was very, very difficult. And I just remember seeing the humanity in Keith Collins that I had never seen before.
Yeah.
And do you want to share a little bit about that? Or?
Yeah, sure. Very difficult time. Tragic loss. My brother died when he was 54. And so, again, just our own vulnerability as people. Those are moments, and I feel for people. I know sometimes you come to the pastor like he's the Bible answer man and has answers. There are moments when I just have to tell you, I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah.
And when you lose people tragically in your life, there just aren't good answers for that. There is a God who is beyond it. There is wisdom from God that we know with certainty exists, even if we can't explain it. And there is a love from God that we know was demonstrated in him sending his own son to die on a cross for us. So that tends to cancel out the possibilities that, okay, well, is it that God doesn't really love me? Is this why this is happening? Or God doesn't have a wise plan? Is that why? God doesn't have the power to do something different? I think you got to eliminate those questions, but you're still left with a situation that just breaks your heart.
Yeah.
And it affects your humanity, and you live in disappointment. And I think I've had multiple arguments with God. I have a sense of good about life that comes from God. My brother dying tragically and going through the season that he went through to get him there, I can't stare at that and just slap the label good all over it. That was good, that was good, that was good. It does not feel good.
No. And without going into the details, it was every reason to lose your religion. That would have been the time to fly off the hook. That would have been the time, because it was a very, very, what's the word? Just bizarre situation. Yeah. And, I just remember being just in constant prayer for you at that time, and just watched you handle it like a freaking champ.
Wow.
And it was admirable. It really was. It's just, to know the details, we don't have to go into the details, but it was a very, very, very difficult time, and what happened and how it happened and all the evil that was involved. There was definitely, if you didn't know that there was a good and bad and an evil and light and darkness, there's where it was.
Yeah. And that's what I mean by that sense of a map that God provides, that that there are moving pieces in this world that God tells you about in the Bible.
Yeah.
So there is an active presence of evil. There's not just some vague sense of, well, we're all making decisions and doing things. There's actually a personality in this world that generates evil, and it's intense at sometimes, and it backs off at others. And I think knowing that helps us to interact with life in a way that, okay, so what's going on right now? Well, it's not just me. It's not just my physical body, but it is. It's not just my emotions, but it is. There's spiritual things happening around me. And I think maintaining hope sometimes has to interact with those moving parts. We have to hear God explain, this is the way life is. There's a brokenness in our world that we need God's explanation for it. Otherwise, you feel like you're just constantly being surprised by how hard it can be, how disappointing it might be, and these shocking tragedies that come our way. We may not have any category for them unless we've kind of looked at God's map and seen, how do we explain life?
Yeah, I've been free from any of these shocking tragedies. I've been totally free from it. It hasn't hit me, and I'm thankful. But you've been through some stuff.
Hang on for more of our conversation with Pastor Keith Collins from Lakeview Christian Center on Hope, Dead or Alive, next.
All Over the Road New Orleans, sponsored by CoinTrader Inc. For gold prices, go to goldpricesnow.com.
What's the name of the current sponsor that we have?
Well, currently our sponsor is CoinTrader Inc., Mine Your Money. And if you want to invest in hard assets, tangible assets.
When's a good time to do that?
Right now. Right this second.
Okay.
Right this second. As a matter of fact, call them right now. Okay?
What's their phone number?
The phone number is really easy. It's 504-267-6004.
Okay. And who would I get on the phone when I call that number?
You probably get one of somebody in India, but we'll make sure that they give us the message.
So you outsource your phone calls?
Yeah. You might hear this. CoinTrader Inc. Mind your money.
That sounds a lot like Swami Guru.
Maybe he works for CoinTrader.
It is. I'm sorry. Thank you.
It's his side hustle.
Day job.
Thank you, CoinTrader Inc., for 2 great seasons and a third one on the way, all over the road, New Orleans, with my brother in broadcasting, Ted Semper, and the executive producer of the year, Nick Vobel. Thank you.
Thanks for stopping by.
Amen, brother.
All Over the Road and their staff and management would like to thank you for 2 seasons, embarking on season 3. Thanks from all over the road. This is the announcer guy speaking.
Oh, I'm hopeful, yes I am hopeful for today. Take this music and use it, let it take you away. And be hopeful, hopeful, and he'll make a way. I know it ain't easy, but that's okay, 'cause we hopeful.
A special series from All Over the Road, New Orleans. Hope, Dead or Alive.
I think the most important thing, obviously, Hope, Dead or Alive, you're on the alive side.
I am. Yeah.
You are. You're on the alive.
I get to say
I hope
that now?
so.
I get to be official?
So, yeah.
So what would you say? I mean, like right now, everything that's going on right now, and believe me, I mean, for instance, there's a young, he's actually a boy going into young adulthood, I guess you could say, when you start growing hair under your arms, and what's that called? Puberty, I guess. And I'm involved with the kid, and in many aspects, mostly as a kind of a instructor with baseball and some other things. You know the kid. I'm not going to bring his name up, but the fact that 11, 12, 13-year-old kids are experiencing depression. May is National Mental Health Awareness Week. That's why we're starting the series, and we're going to get into some of that stuff with some other people that are going to be on. How a 12 and 13-year-old kid could be dealing with depression. But can you imagine, Keith, when you and I, when we were growing up, if we had all this crap? Right. What would have happened? Can you imagine if Vic DelGiorno, BC, had a Facebook page?
Yeah.
You got to be kidding me.
Right.
It's actually a good thing you still don't.
Yeah, it is. I have people that do that for me.
But there's so much fear. It's like the world, creates people are scared. They're living in fear. And would you say that's the opposite of hope? Is fear?
Yeah, well,
to some degree.
Yeah, I think despair might be the opposite in my mind.
Yeah.
But I think fear. I think fear is one of those basic life motivators. In my opinion, if I'm doing counseling with most folks and they're struggling with decisions that they're making, probably the 2 things I'm going to fish around in their life is the things that they're afraid of, where are their fears, and what are their ambitions. Because, we're after something. So we're either running away from things or we're running toward things. And those are the basic components of what make us do life. And fear is massive. Yeah. It is a massively influential feeling and experience, and it can hold us hostage. It can do amazing, terrible things to us.
Yeah. So just living in the world, you can't really get away from it, because even if you don't watch the news, you're going to hear about something. So as a Christian, what do you tell your people, your congregation, whatever, at church, about listening to the news? And there's a line there. You want to keep up with what's going on in the world, but it really can bring you down if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think I probably would start with make sure you're living your life with a significant intake with God. Sometimes we subscribe to too many news feeds and not enough Bible feeds, in my opinion. Yeah. So I need to get God's perspective more than anything. But I do think there's a common sense element. I've seen this in myself over the last year, where I had to just get away from the news.
Yeah.
It was so caustic and hostile, and the mood of it and the tone of it, and whether it was pandemic issues or political issues or racial issues, everything felt like it was disturbing to listen to. And I think at some point it is. I think at some point we just need a break from some of those things. God's not interested in us staring at that all the time. It does become kind of toxic for the soul.
Yeah, but we all kind of got caught up in it, especially with the election and all that. And then when it was all over, I mean, I literally have not watched any news in 2021, and we're taping this toward the end of May. And so the other night, I just wanted to find out what happened at the Bayou Boogaloo. You've heard of the Bayou Boogaloo? Yeah. They used to have it at Bayou St. John. My daughters went to Cabrini, and a lot of times they did something with Cabrini did stuff with Bayou Boogaloo. So I'm always interested. What's going on with Bayou Boogaloo? Of course, they canceled it last year. So this year they had it. So I'm just, okay, let me check out the news. I want to watch Bayou Boogaloo. Now, they did a story on Bayou Boogaloo, but I never got to Bayou Boogaloo because of all the garbage that was. I can't even watch the local news. I can't even watch the weather, the sport. I can't, and then when you try to get away from it, your phone alerts you. Or something. Yeah. It's just, there's just you got to, I mean, you've talked about this many times about having a biblical worldview. Yeah. Just looking at the world, not like the average Joe would look at it. You got to realize that, hey, you've been redeemed. You got to look at it that way. You got to come, you came as a child. You got to stay you got to stay like a child to some degree. And so, it's been difficult. And I just know that now, if you're the man that I think has a lot of answers, you don't have them all, but you got a lot of answers. So here you got somebody that's depressed, okay, that's without hope. They're just depressed. I've struggled with that. I've gotten up in some mornings and I don't want to do anything. I go, I don't even want to get out of bed. Why? I don't know. Sure. Yeah. What do you say to someone like that other than, hey, put on your joy, bro. I mean, because there's a lot of people that are struggling with this mental health awareness, and people are kids, women, adults, seniors. It's a big fight. Yeah. I think, Vic, thanks for preparing me for these deep answers that you wanted to get to. I got a surprise for you coming too. You don't even know. Even harder than it's going to be a nice surprise. Okay, good. I think life has always got several moving parts in it. Right. So when somebody gets to a place where they're lacking motivation, they're depressed, they're kind of just paralyzed by whatever's going on, that's usually not just one thing happening in their life. So I think that the most important thing from an eternal perspective, a God perspective, is I would call there's ultimate hope in life. And then there's settings of hope that are okay to have. You just got to make sure you don't make the little settings of hope turn into ultimate hopes for you. I think God's wanting us to look forward to beauty and to a sunrise and to the reward. I mean, the Bible speaks positively about a person who's a farmer who plants with the expectation there's going to be a crop. He doesn't get chastised for that. He's not told, don't do that. But ultimately, his hope cannot be in his crop coming in. And it can't be in something he provides for himself. And it can't be in some other human being. Ultimately, our hope has got to be in God. And anytime we put it somewhere else, God's not okay with that. God doesn't want us to do that for ourselves, but it robs him of playing the role only he can play. So I would say multiple moving parts. Where's your ultimate hope? Is that a vibrant thing? Do you commune with God in such a way that his promises and his presence are so real to you that they provide reasons for today to be a reason to live my life today? But then there are small hopes that are okay to have. I think it's good to look forward to graduating and to getting a new job. Hey, to the new car you just got to get to enjoy, just as God's blessing to enjoy the breakfast that you're going to have tomorrow morning. I think God buries blessing and goodness in all those settings, that we need some of those things. And so for some people, it'd be practical advice. Hey, change pace a little bit. Go do something. You know what really helps, and you don't know this yet, but it's grandkids.
I don't know that. I don't know that.
Really helps.
I've heard a lot of people back you up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They're the most wonderful things on this planet. I mean, they are just awesome. They just are. And so
they do. They bring our attention to something that lets us celebrate some other things. And we need that. We need that. So I think we need people. I think we need to be careful about our pace of life. I think most people are living lives that have too much in them. So you never get to savor much of anything and taste things. You just move into the next thing. It feels hectic. I think physiologically, you need to pay attention, Vic, at your age.
Thank you.
Our physiology changes. It's God's built-in system of saying this body's not going to last forever. Prepare for eternity.
I don't know. Mine's lasting pretty well.
No,
It's
debatable.
I'm
No one can
tuning
see.
it.
This isn't a video.
Oh, they've seen it. They've seen it. One of the things, this might be another way of asking you the same question, but this is what I feel. I feel like there's a real squeeze going on. I think God is squeezing people. I know he's squeezing me. It's just this big squeeze. It's like, hey, it's time, to put on your big boy pants, And so I think that, what would you say to that? Where is hope in the squeeze?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Is it really?
I did bring a Bible.
Where's the hope in the squeeze?
Hope
Get
in
the
the
word
squeeze.
right there. Let's get the word.
Keith Collins going to his Bible.
All right.
Very, very small print. You don't even need glasses?
No, just to see far away.
I have some. Oh, wow. If you'd like to borrow them.
All right, so here's a passage, the Apostle Paul speaking about a moment in his life that just was weighty, difficult, and he was feeling it, right? In 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 7. And he mentions hope here. He says, our hope for you is unshaken, for we know that as you share in our sufferings, you will also share in our comfort. For we do not want you to be unaware, brothers, of the affliction we experienced in Asia. For we were so utterly burdened beyond our strength that we despaired of life itself. I mean, this is the Apostle Paul going through a really significant moment. He said, indeed, we felt that we had received a sentence of death, but that, here's a purpose, but that was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. He delivered us from such a deadly peril, a squeeze, if you will, right? And he will deliver us. On him we have set our hope that he will deliver us again. So it's interesting, God, and if you look in other places in the Bible, God designs the squeezes.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's kind of hard for us to welcome, because we feel like, God's only going to pet us. He's only going to make everything comfortable. Everything's about being good and
Feeling
nice
good.
and pleasant. And if there's a God who loves us, he would never let us suffer and go through difficulty. But that's not how the Bible reveals God. That there is a lure of this temporary place that it will put its clutches, its hooks around us and keep us here and blind us to bigger things and to reality with God. And God has designed the world in such a way, and he interacts with us in such a way that he squeezes us and causes us to look to him. And that makes sense, and it's super valuable if my life is not just about here, right now, today. Right. If it's about eternity, then the God who loves me is making sure I'm not missing out on that. When he squeezes me, and he does to me what the Apostle Paul said, he causes me to not rely on myself, but to look to him and to set my hope in him. So I need a personal God who's at work in those spaces. I need to see that the squeeze here is not fate. It's not an accident. It's not a world that doesn't have any control in it. It is God at work in my life. And he's providing the squeeze, which is good because that means he won't over squeeze me. I might feel like he is, but he's actually doing exactly what he needs to do to get me to put my hope in him, which is going to rescue me from hopelessness. Because if you don't have ultimate hope, your temporary hopes will always run out, and you'll always end up, if there is no ultimate, let me answer your question this way. If there is no ultimate hope, then hope is dead.
Boy, now you're
Because if you're squeezed like we're talking about, what do? What's your reaction?
Yeah.
If you don't have Jesus, how are you going to react to that squeeze?
Because the squeeze is probably meaning something of a temporary element, something of a local comfort, something we put our security in is coming to an end.
Yeah.
And that's the story of our lives. All of it's going to come to an end at some point. And you can delay it a little while, and you can feel good about yourself at 30, but hey, how old are you now, Vic?
60.
60 came quick, didn't it? I mean, a lot quicker than you thought, man. I know.
Yeah. But I can still hit a fastball. I don't know if this comes from just being with me for almost 38 years, if it's part of that or not. But I do know someone that says this all the time to me. She says, Vic, this is not my home. This is a temporary place. Of course, I'm talking about Martha, who's had to struggle through almost 38 years with me. And so when she says that, hey, this is not my home, I have to agree with her. You're darn right it's not. And that's the way you got to look at it. We're just here we're just, renting space. You've talked a lot of times about we're in exile. We're in exile right now.
That's right.
I never forget that one you did at that men's retreat about exile and crossing the river and all that. I mean, it's so true. It is just so true. And I think in a time like today, I think we need to revisit those places. And you do have to kind of put your big boy pants on. Go, okay, look, I'm not going to let this. I mean, Ted, you've gone through grief like none other. That you've got to, you gotta live.
Yeah.
You gotta live.
Well, life goes on. I mean, your life goes on. If you want to live, it goes on. And other people's lives go on too around you while you're grieving. It took me a while to realize that. I lost my daughter. I don't know if you knew.
No, I knew that.
In 2018 to suicide. The worst thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just put it that way. But and it crushed my faith initially. And my wife, because we prayed for her. And we knew that she was struggling for years.
Yeah.
And then the ultimate, what we prayed against happens.
Yeah. Ted, that's hard, man.
And all you can do, what I learned, it sounds easy. It's not. It wasn't for me. Was just to, it could crush your faith, but and your trust in him has to continue. And it's hard to find that spot. It didn't happen right away, because you get mad. It could be with anything. I mean, that's a huge thing, but it could be with anything that you want. God doesn't allow it to happen. And there's a reason.
Yeah.
Even in suicide. I mean, not going to go into the great detail of it now, but things have come in the last 2.5 years or so that I'm not saying that had to happen to get to this point, but because it did happen, our lives are different.
Yeah.
And continue to be.
Yeah.
But you learn, the only way to learn about grief is to grieve, because I had no idea how bad it could be, how difficult it could be, complicated, especially with a suicide death. But God is good. I mean, you take it one day at a time. Yeah. So when you lost your parents and your brother, you just have to take one day at a time. And I learned also that people can comfort you, but nobody can fix it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Nobody can fix it.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't want to say it just takes time, because the hurt is always there.
See, I'm big on that. I want to fix everything. It just didn't work that way.
And God bless people for trying.
Yeah. And Ted, I would say this just from, walking in a community of well-intended people.
Yeah.
Who encounter somebody who's been through what you have been through. There are like I said, there's precious truths in the Bible. But there's real pain in the human life that these aren't Band-Aids, and they are interacting with complicated, broken situations. And so I think you need permission from people around you not to feel like, okay, Ted, you over this? I think it's perfectly okay for you to say, I'll never be over this.
Right.
Yeah.
Never will.
Because when you remember the God who wired Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, he didn't sit down with them in the original and say, hey, look, you two guys, you're going to be married and have this incredible love relationship with each other. You're going to walk together, build your lives into each other. Oh, and then suddenly one of you is going to go away forever.
Right.
That was never in the design plan. So they're kind of not wired for that. Sin brings with it this intrusion that makes us feel very disoriented when something like that happens. That disorientation causes us to look to God, right? Because I can't fix this. It's beyond me.
Right.
And that's redemptive. I think that's how God gets our attention to realize. And I have to say that the brokenness of our world, it's just beyond my pay grade. I can't fully explain it. So why we pray, if you'd have told me you weren't praying for your daughter to make a change and to turn the corner, that'd have been puzzling. Of course you're praying for that. And it makes sense that you would. But then the outcome didn't answer that prayer. And so now there's a confusion in, well, why did I pray? Why did God allow this? I think the only thing that, again, there aren't cheap answers and easy answers in those moments. The thing that for me sticks out in all the Bible is I have a God who would go to the greatest lengths to meet the greatest need in my life.
Yeah, that's good.
And he demonstrated that by sending his own son in the likeness of a human being to be disrespected, crushed and mistreated, and then for God's own judgment to be put on him instead of on me. And when I stare at that, even in the presence of other confusing moments, and I say, God, do you love me? I have my answer. I still can't explain this moment of tragically losing my daughter. I can't, God, but I am certain of this. You do love me. And one day you will make these things clear to me.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Right. Because he won't reveal, you're not going to get all the answers.
Right.
About why. You know, if I'd have done this, if I didn't do that, whatever, you know, you can go on and on and on. But what you just said, I can grab a hold of that and embrace it. And no, that's the answer I get now. And if my faith has to tell me that, my belief in God, I have to come to the point to like, that's it. And trust him.
Yeah.
For telling me that.
You know, when we first started talking about doing the series on Hope, Dead or Alive, a lot of it, I wanted to start it in May because of the mental health awareness deal. And there were some people that I had, that I was pursuing that we were going to interview. And some of them are well known. Some of them are not so well known, but known. Some of them have 50,000 followers. Some of them are influencers, you know, with this new, you know, socialist media crap. Right. And then God just kind of told me, he goes, you know, Vic, what are you doing? He goes, these stories are right in your lap. They're right in your lap. What are you doing going out looking? You know the people. They're family to you for all intents and purposes. And just to give you an idea of some of the people that we're going to be talking to, you know every one of these people. Okay, one of them is Debbie Basil. Okay, and I'm going to have Ted pretty much carry that one.
Yeah.
The other one is Terry Harbovsky, who on that awful night. Okay, and I remember that night, that awful night. You know, I remember going over there with baseball bats. You know, she was Terry Cincamano. You know, and then Donnie was here today, Bourgeois. And these are people like Ted, you know, that have experienced. I mean, they have a right to say, "Hey, is Hope dead or alive? God, what's going on here?"
Yeah,
they have a right to they have a right. You know, of course. We know the answers. You've given good answers to it, but I think it's going to be pretty powerful, and I think God will use it. And I think it's, you know, once we get up to, you know, this is our third season. You know, we built up an audience, and people are used to what we usually do. I just thought that it was time that, you know, hey, look, you got a platform. It's time to use it. Yeah. So we're using it, and I just can't think of anybody that I'd want to, you know, do it with first than you. No. I'm an extreme admirer. I'm a lover of you. Love you. Love your whole family.
Thank you.
One of your goofy sons is supposed to come over here and pop in and surprise us and say some nice things about you, but of course he didn't show up.
I probably paid him
meathead.
off. Paid him off.
And so obviously, you know, I'm extremely grateful that you take this time and you know, the friendship and the everything that you've. If something happens to me and I drop dead, at least of a witness of a few thousand people, which I think we have that kind of audience, don't we, Ted? A couple thousand people, that I could just say how appreciative I am of you, and, you know, just going back and just thinking about the stuff you and I have done. I know. You know what's so funny is, like, when we first started going to the church that he now pastors, you could have shot a cannon through that place. I remember we were there the second, it was like we were like 2-3 weeks into the place, and they're already have us parking cars, and remember we were ushers. Right. Yeah. I remember one time Keith and I were counting the money in the back. You know, we're looking at checks. We're going, "What? This guy's giving $250? Are you kidding me?" You know, we were Catholic. We're used to throwing $3 in the pan. You know, we're going, "Look at the money here." We're like, "I can't believe this stuff." You know, it just that we had no idea, and then all of a sudden we also turned into the church movers. Yes, we were the movers. Anytime anyone, we were 20-something years old. We were healthy guys. Anytime someone wanted to move, we got the call.
Okay, Vic and friends or whoever that was.
It was me and him. And so we remember the McMurtry move.
Yes,
was it McMurtry? Was he a pitcher for the Braves?
We probably should mention their names.
Let's mention their names.
They're still alive out there.
But we tell these people, okay, we're going to help you move. Okay, now look, you got everything all boxed up. You're ready to go. We're going to show up. We got the truck. Yeah, we got everything. We're ready to go. Keith and I show up, and it was like walking into a Tiffany's department store.
That's right. We could have sat down, had dinner with them, and watched TV on the sofa. Nothing was packed.
Oh man, just the stuff. Yeah. The weddings, everything. But thank you for being with us. We really
my
do.
pleasure.
I think you deserve it.
Absolutely.
Keith Collins.
Wow.
What can I say?
Lakeview Christian Center.
What can I say? The man.
Get me one of those for Sunday, will you?
Services every Sunday morning at
Well, we got 2 services now because
Two
of
services,
COVID.
yeah.
We got a 9 and 11.
9 and 11.
And then they live stream it too, which, I've told you what I think of that.
I know. Sometimes you stay home and watch the live
I do.
stream.
I see.
Yeah,
I'm a victim of my own. I'm a
Because
victim of
I
my
know
own
it's a-
circumstance.
You get caught in traffic on the way to church. It's a terribly long thing for you to.
I
go to
live
church.
literally. I could throw a baseball and hit the church.
Yep.
And I remember when I lived in. You still live in Destrehan.
I do, yeah.
And I was one of the guys trying to come over to Destrehan. And when I lived in Destrehan, we were like how many miles away? Whatever, 20 miles
Yeah,
away.
just about, yeah.
I'd get to church 20 minutes early. Now I'm 20 minutes late. I could walk there. I mean,
It's turning into a
I'm sorry,
confessional,
Keith.
isn't it? This is confession time.
Yeah, it is time. It is.
Yeah.
But Luke was supposed to come by and say hi. Luke's put on a little weight. He's over there working out with the little group over there. Have you been over there
Your
yet?
son-in-law. I have not ventured over there. I'm afraid they'll embarrass me.
Well, I go over and heckle. I go over there and heckle.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. Every now and then. I think because they're all, they work out every night.
I know.
I mean, aren't you supposed to work out every other day? They're working out every night.
That's how we did it, right? We did it the every other day.
Yeah, that's what I
But
still do.
Times
it
have
that way.
changed.
Yeah,
Times have
I
changed.
guess they have. So, what do you think about my lineup? You like my
Oh,
lineup?
awesome. That's a great lineup. There are real stories in those lives. And one of the things I love is, kind of like sitting here with Ted. There are few things that I can imagine for a person more difficult to walk through than what you have been through.
Oh, no doubt.
And yet you are here with grace from God to continue to do life. And I think for anybody battling with hope in their life, to hear stories like Ted's and to hear the stories of the people you've got lined up here is to hear so that there kind of is life after death, right? Because these are deaths that we go through. And God is a God of resurrection, and he can come into your world. That's why he can inject something into your world that wasn't there before. He can give you a new ability to live the life on the other side of these things. And you've got great folks to tell that story. So,
Well, I will say this is that, this is my show. It is my show, Ted.
King of all podcasting.
I'm the king of all podcasting. It's my show.
is no other.
And I can't think of two better guys, two closer friends. You guys are my closest friends, both of you. I know you for years. And I mean, I adore the both of you. So thanks a lot. Keith Collins, ladies and gentlemen. The man, the myth, the legend. You can catch him every Sunday at, now it's a Fleur de Lis address, right? What's the address now?
5885.
5885 Fleur de Lis. Used to be 124 Veterans, remember?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And then we bought up all the property and, anything. But anyway, Keith Collins, thanks for being with us today.
Rob.
This is All Over the Road, New Orleans. This is our series on Hope, Dead or Alive. Let's put one down for Keith Collins says, it's hope. Hope is alive, according to Keith Collins. So there you go. You got it right from the shot. And I'm sorry, Keith, that we didn't get your big, broad-shouldered boy in here to say hi. I'm going to have to get all over him about that.
Harass him. Yeah.
Hope, dead or alive?
Alive, baby.
Alive, baby. Teddy?
Definitely alive.
All right. Be sure to join us for the next edition of Hope, Dead or Alive on All Over the Road, New Orleans, the podcast. This is the king of all podcasting, Vic DelGiorno, saying, I think hope is alive. I do. Alive and well. Come on, baby.
You see, I got hope, so we can use a little, even when you don't, and I won't let go, 'cause a little bit of it can go a long, long way.
There's hope in front of me. There's a light, I still see it. There's a hand still holding me, even when I don't believe it.
I know you're able and I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone.
In every storm that we face, every time that the rain pours down, I know there's hope. In every tear that we cry, every time we ask why we break, I know there's hope.
Don't miss the next episode of Hope, Dead or Alive on All Over the Road, New Orleans.
All Over the Road, New Orleans is the official podcast of the New Orleans Rugby Club, Ted.
Oh, yeah. After the match, before the match, sometimes even during the match, during a scrum, you see those guys with their headphones on? What are they listening to?
The podcast. Listen to the
Aotr.
podcast.
NOLA.
And you know, ladies, it's good to go to these New Orleans Gold rugby matches because the guys wear real tight shorts. I don't know if you know that. They're actually, these guys squeeze into some tight shorts.
I like the way you said that there.
They hold their breath and squeeze it in, don't they?
They jump right into those tight shorts.
That's why I get a front row seat.
Don't bend down to grab a nickel, okay? Don't. All over the road, New Orleans. We love rugby. We love New Orleans. And we especially love the gold.
All over the road at their staff and management would like to thank you for 2 seasons, embarking on season 3. Thanks from all over the road. This is the announcer guy speaking.
Masks, no masks, everything, you can do all you want, but you still need help from the boss. We need help from the boss. That's what happened. We need help.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, work for all my life.
Yeah, we need help. It's all right to say. Now, they'll criticize me for that. How dare he say that? How dare he say that? No, I'll say it. I'll say it.
Thank my lucky stars.
I'll say it. Somebody said to me the other day, "You're the most famous person in the world by far." I said, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." He said, "Yes, you are." I said, "No." He said, "Who's more famous?" I said, "Jesus Christ."
This All Over the Road New Orleans podcast is brought to you by Coin Trader Inc. Mind your money.